My husband told me he had to work unexpected overtime and wouldn't be coming home. I took a cab, followed him, and saw him taking his mother to buy a luxury high-rise condo. When I discovered he had taken out a $900,000 loan in my name, my mother gave him a massive surprise that left his entire family pale with terror. Here is my story. The clock struck 8 p.m. The flickering candlelight on the dining table cast a mesmerizing glow on our red wine. The evening breeze on the rooftop terrace carried the slight chill of the city night, but my heart felt incredibly warm. Today was my third wedding anniversary with Tyler. 3 years wasn't a lifetime, but it was long enough to experience the sweet and bitter moments of married life. Tyler sat across from me. His meticulously tailored navy blue suit highlighted the elegant and successful image he always strove to project. He looked at me, his eyes brimming with love, and gently pushed a dark blue velvet box across the table. He smiled, his voice deep and warm. "For you, darling. Thank you for working so hard for our family over the past 3 years." I took the box, my hands trembling slightly with excitement. When the lid popped open, under the restaurant's warm lights, a white gold necklace with a brilliant blue sapphire pendant revealed itself, sparkling blindingly. I froze, my hand instinctively covering my mouth. I remembered walking past a high-end jewelry boutique once and casually mentioning how much I loved a similar necklace. I couldn't believe he remembered after all this time. I choked up. "It's so beautiful, honey. But this must have been so expensive, right? I saw them selling for over $1,500. Tyler stood up, walked behind me, and carefully placed the necklace around my neck. His warm breath on my nape made me feel incredibly at peace. He whispered, "No matter how expensive it is, it can't compare to my wife. As long as you like it, that's all that matters. I can handle the money. Wear it and let your friends be jealous." The cold stone touched my skin, but my heart was on fire. I truly thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. That was until Tyler's phone, resting on the table, began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up. The incoming number wasn't saved in his contacts, but it immediately caught my attention. Having worked as a chief accountant for years, I have a photographic memory for numbers, and that prefix, if I wasn't mistaken, belonged to the debt collection department of a major commercial bank. Tyler, who had been laughing and chatting, glanced at the screen, and his face instantly turned to stone. He quickly flipped the phone face down, his finger swiping to decline the call. I pretended not to notice and asked, "Who's calling at this hour? Why didn't you answer?" Tyler picked up his wine glass, taking a large gulp to hide his panic, and forced a laugh. "Ah, just some real estate agents trying to pitch a project. They push their quotas hard this time of night. So annoying. Today is our special day. I don't want to be bothered." I nodded, not asking further, but a vague sense of unease rippled through my mind. Dinner continued with cheerful conversation, but I noticed his smile was no longer as natural as before. On the drive home, Tyler seemed restless. His fingers constantly tapped a rhythm on the steering wheel, a habit he had whenever he was anxious. I looked at his profile under the passing streetlights, wondering what he was hiding from me. Upon returning home, Tyler complained of exhaustion and went to take a shower first. I stayed in the bedroom, taking off the sapphire necklace to admire it. Under the bright fluorescent lights of the bedroom, the blue stone somehow looked less brilliant than it did at the restaurant. I was about to put it back in its box when I noticed his suit jacket draped carelessly over a chair. As a wife, I have a habit of checking pockets before taking clothes to the dry cleaners to avoid leaving anything behind. I reached into his pocket and my fingers brushed against a small, crumpled piece of paper. I smoothed it out, intending to throw it in the trash, but the text on it caught my eye. It was an online receipt from a cheap accessories shop. The order date was 3 days ago. Premium artificial sapphire necklace, EP11 replica. Price, $25. I was paralyzed. The thin piece of paper felt as heavy as lead in my hand. $25. Was this the true value of the $1,000 gift my husband just lovingly placed around my neck? I am not a materialistic person. If he had told me he bought a cheap replica because money was tight, I would have worn it happily. But why lie? Why construct a glamorous facade of success and wealth while buying cheap costume jewelry online? The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom, mixed with Tyler whistling a cheerful tune. I looked in the mirror, seeing the woman wearing a fake necklace with a bitter smile on her lips. My husband, a man who always cared about his image. What was he hiding behind that polished exterior? And that call from the bank? Was it related to this financial desperation? I carefully folded the receipt and tucked it deep under the velvet lining of the jewelry box. I wouldn't expose him right now. I needed to observe. I needed to understand exactly what was happening. That night, lying next to him, his back felt so foreign to me. Our spacious marital bed suddenly felt cramped, crowded by the secrets slithering between us. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, waking me from a fitful, dream-filled sleep. Tyler was still sound asleep, his breathing steady, his arm draped over his eyes. The alarm on his phone on the nightstand suddenly blared. Afraid it would ruin his sleep, I reached over to turn it off for him, as was my daily habit. My fingers swiped the screen, and I entered our wedding anniversary, his usual passcode. Incorrect passcode. I frowned, thinking I made a typo. I tried again, carefully tapping each number. Still incorrect. My heart skipped a beat. I tried his birthday, my birthday, even the day we officially started dating, all invalid. The cold screen flashed. Try again in 1 minute. I set the phone down, a chill running down my spine cup colder than the AC. Just yesterday, he had asked me to hold his phone and reply to a text from his mother. Yet, overnight, after that $25 receipt, the passcode was changed. When a man suddenly changes his phone passcode, if it isn't another woman, it's dark financial secrets he doesn't want his wife to see. I got out of bed, brewed a strong cup of black coffee, and tried to calm myself. Today, I had good news to share. The CEO had just announced my promotion to Chief Financial Officer for a massive new urban development project in the West Loop, a crucial project with a massive budget. It was a huge step in the career I had worked so hard for, but looking at Tyler's behavior, the joy choked in my throat. At the office, I texted Tyler, "Honey, I got promoted. I'm leading a huge project. Let's go out and celebrate tonight." It wasn't until noon that Tyler replied with a brief, "Congrats, babe. But I have to work mandatory overtime tonight. The boss is breathing down my neck. You go ahead and eat without me." His indifference felt like a bucket of cold water to the face. My professional intuition kicked in. I decided to audit our family finances. We had a joint savings account on our banking app, saving up for a larger house in the future. I logged in, and the number that appeared made me rub my eyes in disbelief. A $50,000 certificate of deposit had matured last week. The available balance was now only $45,000. $5,000 had vanished without a single word of explanation. Trembling, I clicked on the transaction history. A wire transfer was executed 2 days ago. The memo was blank. The recipient was an unfamiliar name, Kevin Miller. I immediately called Tyler. It rang for a long time before he picked up. His voice sounded annoyed and rushed. "Hello? I'm in a meeting. Is this an emergency?" I tried to keep my voice as steady as possible. "Tyler, I just checked our joint account. Why is it missing $5,000? Who did you transfer it to without discussing it with me?" The other end went silent for a few seconds, then his voice returned, full of reproach. "Oh, that? Kevin, my coworker. His mom needed emergency heart surgery, and he couldn't get the cash in time, so he asked for a short-term loan. I thought a human life was more important, so I just sent it. I was going to tell you tonight, but I forgot. Why are you overreacting? It's just $5,000. Saving a life is what matters." I was stunned. Not only did he not apologize, but he turned it around to criticize me as petty and calculating. I said, my voice tight, $5,000 isn't a small amount for us. Furthermore, it's a joint fund. The rule is we discuss it. Doing this means you don't respect me. Tyler let out a long, heavy sigh through the receiver. "Fine, I'm wrong, okay? I apologize. Look, I'm incredibly busy right now. Clients are waiting. We'll talk tonight." He hung up abruptly, leaving me with the endless dial tone. I sat numbly, staring at my computer screen, resentment welling up. He used the moral high ground of saving a life to shut me up, turning my legitimate concern into selfishness. This was gaslighting, pure and simple. That night, Tyler came home late, reeking of alcohol. He threw his dirty clothes into the hamper and passed out on the bed. I quietly went to sort his laundry. As I picked up his dress pants, another receipt fell out of the back pocket. It wasn't for fake jewelry. It was a receipt from one of the most famously expensive five-star seafood restaurants downtown. The time, 12:30 p.m. today. Right when he claimed he was too busy in a meeting to eat lunch. Guest count, 2. Total bill, $350. The order consisted of premium lobster and abalone, $350 for a lunch, while he lied to me about being busy. More importantly, who did he eat with? Kevin, whose mother was supposedly having heart surgery, certainly wouldn't be in the mood for a lavish seafood lunch. I gripped the receipt, my nails digging so hard into my palms that they left marks. The missing $5,000, the changed passcode, the fake jewelry, and the luxurious lies. The image of my exemplary husband was shattering into pieces right before my eyes. That Friday, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in, the sky as gray as my chaotic thoughts. Tyler woke up very early. He stood in front of the mirror, grooming himself meticulously, spraying on the expensive cologne he usually saved for special occasions. He said his company was hosting a team-building retreat at a resort in Lake Geneva to boost morale, and he wouldn't be home tonight. Watching his eager back as he rolled his small suitcase out the door, a bitter suspicion rose in my heart. Would a man who lied about a fake necklace and secretly spent lavishly really be going on a corporate retreat? As the door clicked shut, I had no mind for housework. I sat frozen on the sofa, clutching my phone, engaged in a fierce mental battle over whether to check his location. Ultimately, anxiety defeated my pride. I opened the location sharing feature we had set up during a vacation to Miami last year, a feature Tyler had likely forgotten to disable. The blue dot on the map moved slowly across the bridge, but it wasn't heading toward Wisconsin as he claimed. The car stopped at a newly handed-over, ultra-luxury high-rise development in the Gold Coast, known as the most exclusive residential area in the city. My heart pounded. My intuition screamed that something was terribly wrong. I quickly changed clothes, hailed a cab, and directed the driver to follow the GPS dot on my phone. Throughout the ride, I tried to reassure myself. Maybe the company changed venues, or maybe he was just picking up a coworker. But when the cab pulled up in front of the luxury tower's lobby, the naked truth slapped me in the face. From a distance, I saw my husband's familiar car parked in the prospective buyer's area. Tyler stepped out, but the person with him wasn't some young, beautiful female coworker as I had feared. It was a woman in her 50s, stout, wearing a gaudy floral dress. It was my mother-in-law, Martha. She walked, laughing and chatting, pointing up at the towering skyscrapers with undisguised satisfaction. I told the driver to pull over in a blind spot, pulled my baseball cap down low over my face, and quietly tailed them into the lobby. The luxurious waiting area reeked of money. The clicking of high heels on the marble floor sounded crisp. I hid behind a large potted plant, close enough to hear Martha's booming voice. "This place is truly high class, son." It wasn't a waste of time consulting the psychic. He said this direction brings ultimate prosperity. That master bedroom is so huge, I'm going to put a massive glass display case there for my designer bags and your father's liquor collection. Tyler walked beside her, nodding in agreement, his tone incredibly respectful, vastly different from his usual grumpy demeanor when discussing money with me. "As long as you like it, Mom. I already told the interior designers to leave the largest space for you and Dad. Natalie and I will just take the smaller guest room in the back. We work all day anyway. We just need a place to sleep at night." I stood paralyzed behind the leaves, feeling as if someone had just crushed my heart. So, the team-building retreat was just an excuse to take his mother condo shopping. A condo that I, his wife, knew absolutely nothing about. But what hurt the most was their attitude when mentioning me. In their radiant future plans, I was just a minor background character, relegated to a small corner in a spare room, treated more like a tenant than the lady of the house. Martha cackled, slapping her son on the shoulder before continuing. She lowered her voice, but it still reached my ears. Make sure you handle the paperwork cleverly. Don't let Natalie know she's carrying the debt. Wait until your father wins his money back. Then we'll see. Women knowing too much only causes trouble. Just let her work herself to the bone to pay the debt for us. Her words felt like boiling water poured over me, shocking me so much I almost dropped my phone. Carrying the debt? Father winning his money back? Those words danced in my head, painting a dark picture I had never imagined. It turned out the greatest enemy of this marriage wasn't a third party, but the ruthless calculations of the people I called family. After viewing the model unit, Tyler escorted Martha toward a high-end restaurant in the complex for lunch. Waiting until their silhouettes disappeared behind the revolving glass doors, I finally dared to step out of hiding, my legs shaking so badly, I almost collapsed. I looked up at the towering skyscraper in front of me, where my husband had just joyfully painted a picture of a new home for his parents. Driven by a mix of curiosity and sheer outrage, I had to go up there. I had to see with my own eyes the trap they were setting for me. Taking advantage of a security guard distracted by a tour group, I slipped into the freight elevator and hit the button for the 18th floor, as I had overheard earlier. The unit was a corner penthouse. The front door was ajar because the interior contractors had just stepped out for their lunch break. The smell of fresh paint and drywall hit my nose heavily, but I didn't care about the toxic fumes. I stepped into the sprawling condo, boasting a breathtaking panoramic view of Lake Michigan, 10 times more luxurious than the cramped apartment we currently lived in. I walked through the massive living room into the master bedroom, the room Martha had claimed for herself. In an unfinished alcove, a small gray portable safe sat temporarily on a wooden shelf. This was likely where Tyler kept important documents during the transaction process. He always had a habit of being overly paranoid with outsiders, but careless around family. My heart raced. I approached and touched the cold electronic keypad. What was the passcode? I recalled yesterday's events. He had changed his phone passcode to prevent me from checking it. His birthday, our anniversary, none worked. I closed my eyes, trying to think using Tyler's logic. For a pragmatic, ego-driven man like him, what was most closely tied to his wealth and status? His car. Yes, the Mazda. He pampered more than his wife. Trembling, I typed the last 4 digits of his license plate. Beep click, the deadbolt retracted with a dry clack in the silent room. The safe door swung open, revealing a thick stack of files clipped in a blue plastic folder. Holding my breath, I pulled it out and flipped through the pages. On the very first page, the bold text "Luxury Condominium Purchase Agreement" caught my eye. Contract value: $1,500,000. $1.5 million. The astronomical number danced before my eyes, making me so dizzy I had to lean against the wall to stay upright. Tyler and I had saved for 3 years, and even including the money my parents gave us, our account only held $50,000. Where did this massive sum come from? How did he get the money to buy such an extravagant penthouse? I flipped to the next pages, my hands now shaking uncontrollably. Beneath the purchase agreement was a bank mortgage contract. Loan amount: $900,000. A $900,000 principal debt. A number a salaried employee like me wouldn't dare dream of in a lifetime. But the most horrifying part wasn't the number itself. It was the name listed under co-borrower and guarantor. In that empty, dust-filled room, I felt like I was standing in the middle of a blizzard. The glamour of this condo was built on lies, and its foundation was the betrayal of my trust. I thought I had broken into our future home, but I had actually stepped into the crime scene of a massive fraud, and I was the primary victim. I stared blankly at the guarantor line. Natalie Harper, neatly typed on the white paper. Next to my name was a signature in blue ink, a signature so familiar I had to rub my eyes and look again. It was exactly my signature, or at least a 99% perfect forgery. But I swore to the heavens, I had never put a pen to any loan document of this magnitude. I had never stepped foot in a bank for an underwriting process. My memory spun, trying to figure out where I had slipped up. And then, an evening from over a month ago flashed vividly in my mind. Tyler had come home looking frantic, claiming his company was restructuring and making it mandatory for managers and their families to sign up for linked corporate life insurance policies to keep their positions. He handed me a thick stack of papers, rambling about terms and benefits, urging me to sign immediately so he could submit them early the next morning. The living room lighting had been dim, and I was exhausted from just finishing quarterly tax reports. Combined with my absolute trust in my husband, I didn't read every single page. I only remembered him rapidly flipping the pages, pointing to pencil marks, sign here, and here. Initial this corner. It turned out that, hidden among those harmless insurance papers, he had cleverly slipped in a full power of attorney, or perhaps the final signature page of this exact mortgage contract. I felt like my chest was being crushed. Breathing became agonizingly difficult. $900,000. A 30-year term. Adjustable interest rate. If Tyler and his family couldn't pay, or intentionally defaulted, the bank would seize all my assets. Our current home, half of which was paid for by the lifelong blood, sweat, and tears of my parents, would be foreclosed and liquidated to pay for his mother's luxury nest. My own stupidity hurt more than the betrayal. I had trusted him unconditionally. I had pitied him for working so hard to support us, and he repaid me with a ruthless legal trap. He didn't just want my money. He wanted to sell my future into indentured servitude to serve his mother's vanity. Tears fell onto the file, blurring the bank's red seal. I remembered Martha's words from earlier. Just let her work herself to the bone to pay the debt for us. It turned out, in their eyes, I wasn't a daughter-in-law, not family, but a sacrificial lamb, a living financial tool. They would live like royalty in this $1.5 million condo, while I broke my back working myself to exhaustion to pay their interest. I bit my lip hard to stop a sob from escaping. No, I am not allowed to be weak right now. Crying won't solve the problem, and showing mercy to a scammer is cruelty to myself. I wiped my tears, my gaze turning icy sharp. Tyler, you dared to use a pen to deceive me, so I will use these exact papers to teach you a lesson. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but my movements were decisive. I photographed every single page of the file, especially the ones with the forged signature and the liability clauses. I captured the loan account numbers, the bank seals missing absolutely nothing. Once I was certain all the evidence was securely backed up to my cloud storage, I carefully restacked the file exactly as it was, wiped my fingerprints off the safe, and closed it. Leaving the condo, I practically ran down the emergency stairwell, terrified of running into them in the elevator. My legs scraped against rebar and broken bricks in the construction zone, drawing blood from my knees. But physical pain was nothing compared to the wound in my heart. Out on the main street, I hailed a cab and went straight to a quiet coffee shop where I could calm down and plan my next move. The first thing I did was order a discreet, mini voice recorder and a GPS tracker online. I needed to hear what they said when I wasn't around, the filthy schemes they hid behind their fake smiles. I would secretly place it under his car seat and in our living room. Once I was slightly calmer, I dialed my mother's number. My mother, Eleanor, is a retired high school teacher, but her sharpness and composure have always been my strongest pillar of support. Hearing her warm voice on the line, "Hello, Natalie? Aren't you working today?" I couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into uncontrollable sobs. I told her everything, from the fake necklace and the changed passcode to the charade of buying the condo and the massive $900,000 debt. My mother listened in silence, only letting out heavy sighs occasionally. When I finished, she didn't scold me for being foolish, nor did she scream curses at her in-laws like I expected. Her voice dropped, becoming unusually cold and steely. She articulated every word clearly. "Natalie, listen to me. Right now, you must absolutely not alert the snake in the grass. If you make a scene now, Tyler will be on guard. He might hide assets or try to pin the blame entirely on you, and you'll lose everything." Enough crying. "Now we use our heads," I hiccuped. "But Mom, I'm terrified. The debt is so huge." She cut me off. "Afraid of what? Black and white ink, a forged signature, a handwriting analysis will clear you instantly. But the crucial thing right now is you need to figure out where he got the $500,000 down payment for that place. His salary is peanuts, and his family is dead broke. I suspect he's involved in illegal gambling or borrowed from loan sharks. You have to find that root cause so we can rip his whole family up by the roots. My mother's words were a lighthouse, illuminating my chaotic mind. She was right. Tyler couldn't just magically have $500,000. If he borrowed from the mob to put the money down, and then used this condo as collateral to secure a bank loan to cycle the funds, the situation was far more dangerous than I had imagined. Mom told me to go home, act completely normal, as if I knew nothing, and even pretend to be more docile so they would drop their guard. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. I wasn't alone in this war. With my mother by my side, I absolutely would not let them trample on my life for another second. I stood up, paid for my drink, and walked out of the cafe with a completely different mindset. The naive, trusting wife of yesterday was dead. Now, there was only a woman armed and ready to protect herself. Tyler came home at 11 p.m., wearing the fake, exhausted expression he had frequently adopted lately. I was sitting on the living room sofa, flipping through a magazine, but my mind was taut as a bowstring, waiting for my husband's next act. Seeing I was still awake, Tyler looked momentarily startled, but quickly smiled. He walked over, sat beside me, and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. The faint smell of alcohol hit my nose, making my stomach turn. He massaged my shoulders, whispering, "Still awake, babe? I'm sorry, I've just been so swamped lately. The boss is restructuring departments, so we all have to give 110%. Oh, by the way, my boss said that, to cover client entertainment and travel expenses, managers need to open a high-limit corporate credit card." I held my breath, knowing the fox was showing its tail. I faked a yawn, rubbing my eyes. What kind of card? I thought the company issues corporate cards directly. Why make employees open it themselves? Tyler clicked his tongue, making it sound like complex corporate protocol. You don't understand the process. Opening a personal card and getting reimbursed gives us more flexibility. Plus, I'm gunning for the vice president promotion. I need to demonstrate strong financial capacity. I want to open a card with a $50,000 limit, but the bank requires a guarantor or collateral. Can you co-sign for me? The paperwork is super simple. I already had a buddy draft the application. $50,000. That number danced in my head, placed right next to the $900,000 on that ghostly mortgage contract. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. He secretly turned me into a debtor for $900,000, and now he wanted me to shoulder another $50,000 so he could spend it or plug whatever hole he had dug. I looked deep into my husband's eyes, seeing no love, only cold calculation masked by a sweet exterior. I gently pushed his hand away and gave a faint smile. $50,000 is a lot of money, Tyler. Honestly, I've been feeling really uneasy lately. I went to an astrologer, and she told me our stars are misaligned this month. We absolutely must not sign any financial documents, or we'll face total bankruptcy. Can we wait until next month? I'm really anxious about it. Tyler frowned, unable to hide his disappointment and irritation. You're being superstitious again. Career opportunities wait for no one. If you won't help your husband, who will? It's just a signature. Are you really going to be this stingy with me? I remained firm but soft-spoken. I'm not being stingy. I'm worried about you. Let me check the auspicious dates first. It's late. Let's go to bed. I stood up and went to the bedroom, leaving Tyler sitting there fuming. The next morning, the moment Tyler drove away, I opened the audio app connected to the recorder I had secretly stuck under the coffee table last night. Tyler's voice came through crystal clear in the quiet room, booming and entirely different from his gentle tone with me. "Mom, Natalie is being a bitch. She said she went to some psychic and refused to sign the credit card application. Don't worry, Mom. Natalie is an idiot. A few sweet words and she'll cave. She trusts me blindly, signs whatever I tell her. Look, wait until the card arrives. I'll pull out cash advances and take you to buy furniture for the new place. I'm completely tapped out of cash right now." Every word from the man I shared a bed with felt like needles piercing my heart, aching and bleeding. Natalie is an idiot. That phrase echoed in my ears, shredding the very last shred of our marriage. It turned out, in his and his family's eyes, my trust and sacrifices were just manifestations of stupidity, an opportunity for them to exploit and drain me to the bone. I gripped the recorder tightly. I wasn't crying anymore. Instead, a fire of vengeance burned fiercely, incinerating any weakness left in me. Saturday evening, the atmosphere in the house was heavy as lead because Tyler was still pouting over the credit card. We ate dinner in total silence. The clinking of chopsticks against bowls sounded dry and grating. Right then, my phone on the dining table rang. The screen displayed, "Mom." I glanced at Tyler. He kept his head down, eating, looking entirely indifferent. I took a deep breath, answered the call, and purposefully put it on speaker. The volume was just loud enough for the person across from me to hear. My mother's voice came through, trembling and full of excitement. Her acting was so brilliant that if I didn't know the script, I would have believed it was real. "Hello, Natalie. What are you doing? Have you kids eaten yet? Honey, I have the most amazing news. I had to call you immediately." I feigned surprise, putting down my fork. "Yes, we're eating. What's wrong? Why is your voice shaking? Are you feeling okay?" My mother laughed brightly on the other end. "Healthy. I'm healthier than ever. Natalie, you know that plot of farmland back in Indiana your grandparents left me? The new state highway expansion is going right through it. The eminent domain buyout is finalized. I just got the notice. Between the land and the crops, they're compensating me almost $750,000. $750,000. Honey, clatter." Tyler dropped his bowl. His eyes widened to their maximum capacity, his jaw dropping as he stared at the phone. His previous cold indifference vanished entirely, replaced by extreme shock mixed with a flash of raw greed in the depths of his eyes. My mother continued enthusiastically. "I've worked hard my whole life, and now heaven is blessing me. I'm old, I don't need this kind of money. I'm thinking of giving you and Tyler a massive chunk, so you can upgrade to a bigger house. Your apartment is too cramped. Anyway, I just wanted to share the good news. Come visit this weekend, both of you. I'm making a huge celebratory dinner." I said yes, said goodbye, and hung up, suppressing a sigh of relief. As I looked up, Tyler was staring at me, his eyes shining like high beams. He hastily picked up his bowl, wiped a few grains of rice off the table, and pulled his chair right next to me. A sycophantic smile plastered across his handsome face. "Babe, Mom just said she got a $750,000 buyout. Oh my God, such huge news. Why didn't you tell me? My mother-in-law is so blessed. Your grandparents are watching over her. See? I told you this year was going to bring us massive luck." As he spoke, he quickly poured me a glass of warm water and moved behind me to massage my shoulders, as attentive as if I were royalty. His whiplash change in attitude made me sick to my stomach. A minute ago, I was an idiot, a burden blocking his career. Now, smelling money, I was his treasure. I gave a cold smile, removing his hands. "It's just luck, honey. But the money is Mom's. It's her right to do whatever she wants with it. As children, we shouldn't demand anything." Tyler hurriedly waved his hands, his tone dripping with fake morality. "Hey, you can't say that. You're her only child. Mom's money will eventually be ours. It's not going anywhere. The important thing is we have to help her manage and invest it so it grows. Leaving it dead in a bank account is a waste. Let's head over there early this weekend. I need to buy some nice gifts for her." Watching his ecstatic, calculating face, I sneered internally. He took the bait. My mother's phantom $750,000 was a juicy piece of meat this starving wolf couldn't resist. That entire week, the atmosphere in my house completely changed, from cold and gloomy to artificially warm and spring-like. Tyler came home early from work, stopped complaining about his job, and even volunteered to wash the dishes, something he hadn't touched in 3 years of marriage. But I knew behind this sudden attentiveness were calculations running through his head like a money-counting machine. On Thursday night, while we were watching TV, Tyler started his pitch. He sliced an apple, and carefully fed a piece directly to me. He said softly, "Babe, I was crunching some numbers today. If Mom just puts that $750K in the bank, the interest is too low. One spike in inflation, and it loses value. In this economy, smart money goes into real estate to preserve wealth. I also think Mom is getting older. Living alone out in the country is lonely. What if we bring her to Chicago to live with us?" I chewed the apple, which tasted bitter in my throat, and feigned innocence. "But our place is so small. Where would she stay? On the sofa?" Tyler's eyes lit up. He slapped his thigh. "Exactly. That's why I'm saying this is the perfect opportunity to upgrade our house. I have a buddy who works on that new West Loop luxury development. They have some VIP developer units available. Huge discounts. If we sell this place, plus Mom's money, we have enough to buy a spacious condo outright. It has a huge terrace for Mom to garden, and her own master suite to retire in comfort. Doesn't that sound logical?" I almost burst out laughing. The new West Loop development he mentioned was the exact place he had secretly bought the $1.5 million condo and strapped me with the debt. He wanted to use my mother's money to fill his massive debt hole, turning my mother's private assets into joint property, or worse, property owned entirely by his family. One arrow, two targets. Solve his debt crisis, and gain the reputation of a filial son, bringing his mother-in-law to live with him. I kept a straight face, pondered for a moment, and said, "It's a good idea, but my mom is very cautious. She says she only trusts finance professionals who have vision. She wants to decide what to do with the money herself. If I tell her, she won't listen. Why don't you present it to her directly this weekend? You're good with words, and you work in business. She'll probably listen to you." Hearing this, Tyler was as ecstatic as if he had struck gold, nodding vigorously. Yes, trust me, babe. I'll draw up a detailed business plan. I guarantee Mom will love it once she hears it. We are her children. Taking care of her is our responsibility." Watching him eagerly head into his home office, pulling out paper and pen to calculate, I shuddered at the bottomless greed of human nature. He had no idea that the finance professional my mother trusted wasn't him, but justice and truth. The trap my mother and I had set, he was walking into willingly with all his greed and ignorance. That night, I lay with my back to him, listening to the clacking of his keyboard late into the night. He was surely dreaming of his luxurious mansion, luxury cars, and a royal life built on the blood and sweat of others. Friday morning, Tyler claimed he had an important client meeting and couldn't drop me off at work like usual. I knew full well his client was none other than his own parents. They were definitely having a tactical meeting on how to swallow my mother's $750,000 whole. I waited until Tyler left, then opened the listening app connected to the GPS tracker in his car. The engine rumbled, followed by the sound of a phone call connecting through the Bluetooth speakers. Tyler called his dad, his tone urgent and tense. "Dad, tell Mom to get ready. We're going to Eleanor's this weekend. This is a sweet deal, Dad. The old lady got a $750K payout. I tested the waters. Natalie is completely under my control." My father-in-law's gruff voice echoed, raspy like a lifelong chain smoker's. 750 grand? That's perfect. You have to handle this delicately. I'm sweating bullets over here. The loan sharks just texted threatening to cut my Achilles tendons. That $500K I borrowed from the mob to give you for the condo down payment. The interest is compounding daily. It's astronomical now. I froze, my limbs turning ice cold. $500,000. It turned out the initial down payment for that $1. 5M condo wasn't from savings or investments. It was hard money borrowed from illegal loan sharks. My father-in-law, Richard, a man who always acted self-righteous and quiet, was actually a degenerate gambler. Tyler reassured his father. "Don't worry, Dad. I've got it all calculated. We'll bait Eleanor into handing over the $750K to buy the house, telling her it's a discounted VIP unit. But in reality, we use that cash to pay off the mob principal and interest immediately. Once that's done, I'll take the deed to the new place and refinance it with the bank to pull cash out as capital. We'll cycle the money and everything will be fine. The house stays in my name, and the debt is guaranteed by Natalie. We hold all the cards, nothing to fear. Richard chuckled darkly. Good boy. Like father, like son. Make sure you tell your mother to act her part well. Don't let the tale show. Natalie might be an accountant, but she's naive when it comes to the real world. She can't beat our family. Once this is done, our lives change, and I'll quit gambling for good. I took off the earphones, nausea rising to my throat. A family of literal parasites. They didn't just want to trick me into carrying their mortgage. They wanted to use my mother's retirement fund to pay off illegal gambling debts. A vicious, airtight plan that left me absolutely no way out. If it weren't for my mother's fateful phone call, if I had stupidly signed those papers, I would have been sold down the river, and my mother's assets would have been devoured entirely. I sat in my office, looking out the glass window at the gray sky. The towering skyscrapers looked like monsters ready to swallow small, insignificant lives. I realized I was living in a den of wolves in sheep's clothing. My kindness and patience had been viewed as stupidity to be trampled on. But they were wrong. When an animal is backed into a corner, it fights back harder than ever. And I, Natalie Harper, would show them the price they had to pay for daring to touch my family. That weekend, a steady rain poured down. The early winter chill seeped through the window cracks, but the atmosphere inside our small apartment was sweltering due to the presence of all the in-laws. My mother, Eleanor, had driven up from downstate early in the morning, bringing loads of organic vegetables and farm-raised chickens, carrying the aura of a lottery winner ready to host VIP guests. Following the script we discussed, my mother dressed a bit more flashily than usual today. She wore a thick gold chain, and her fingers sparkled with a large ruby ring, instantly projecting the sudden wealth of a rural woman who had just received a massive payout. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Tyler rushed to open the door, bowing and welcoming his parents inside with exaggerated warmth. Martha wore a burgundy velvet dress, carrying a high-quality knockoff designer bag. Her makeup was heavy, but it couldn't hide the wrinkles of anxiety. Beside her was Richard, keeping his deep, quiet demeanor, but his eyes darted continuously around our cramped living room, as if appraising every piece of furniture. As soon as she saw my mother emerge from the kitchen, Martha rushed over and grabbed her hands, her voice so sickeningly sweet it gave me goosebumps. "Oh, Eleanor. It's been so long. You look so radiant and prosperous lately. The kids told me you received a huge blessing. Heaven truly rewards the kind-hearted. We are so connected. Our children are successful, and now this wealth. What could be better?" My mother gave a polite laugh, skillfully sliding her hands out of the calculating grip of her in-law, and pointed to the lavish dinner table already set. "Oh, it's no great blessing, just fate. I've worked the land my whole life. Getting a little compensation in my old age is just a comfort. Please, have a seat. I made some home-cooked dishes for us. Let's eat and discuss the kids' future." The dinner proceeded in an atmosphere that was both noisy and utterly fake. Tyler constantly served food to his mother-in-law, his mouth running a mile a minute, praising her cooking as better than a Michelin star restaurant. He attentively peeled shrimp and removed fish bones for her, things he hadn't done a single time in our 3 years of marriage. Watching my husband dote on my mother, I felt no emotion other than bitter irony. This filial piety was priced at $750,000. If my mother were still a retired teacher on a modest pension, would he even glance at her plate? Martha sat across the table, casually probing as she ate. "Eleanor, I heard from Tyler that you plan to use the buyout money to buy a house for the kids. That is so responsible of you. They are cramped in this apartment. When they have kids, it'll be too tight. In this economy, land is gold. If you have cash, you have to lock it down before inflation eats it." My mother took a sip of wine, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Well, that's what I was thinking. I've worked hard my whole life. Now I just want my kids to be comfortable. I plan to buy a luxury condo for them outright, no mortgages or loans whatsoever, so they can live stress-free and focus on their careers. What do you think?" Hearing the word outright, I saw Tyler's hand freeze in midair. A piece of chicken dropped from his chopsticks, splashing into the dipping sauce. Martha also froze, the smile stiffening on her lips. Clearly, the buy outright script was not in their plans. They needed liquid cash, or they needed me to carry the debt, not a legally clean house with no mortgage under my name or my mother's. They exchanged panicked glances, and I knew this juicy bait was starting to choke these greedy predators. The atmosphere at the dining table suddenly dropped in a bizarre way after my mother's declaration. The lively chatter from a moment ago was snuffed out, leaving only the sound of rain pattering on the balcony and the sporadic, dry clinking of silverware. Tyler hurriedly grabbed a napkin to wipe the sauce off his shirt. His forehead began to bead with sweat despite the AC blasting. He glanced at his parents for help, then turned to his mother-in-law, forcing a stiff smile. He stammered, "Mom, you plan to buy it outright?" I think that would be a huge waste. In business today, nobody ties up all their cash in fixed assets. We need to use financial leverage, Mom. I mean, you give the money to me, I only put down a percentage, and we finance the rest for a low interest rate. The remaining cash, we invest elsewhere for high returns. That's the golden goose strategy. Martha quickly chimed in, her voice pitching high with anxiety. Yes, exactly, Eleanor. Tyler works in finance. He knows all about this. Dumping all your money into a house to just sit there is foolish. You should give the money to them and let Tyler handle it. He knows how to make money grow. If you buy it outright for $750K, what happens if someone gets sick or there's an emergency and you need liquid cash? I sat quietly next to them, observing the clumsy theatrics of my in-laws. They were truly panicking. If my mother bought the house outright in her name or mine, the $500K mob debt Richard owed wouldn't get paid, and the plan to use me as the fall guy for the $900K mortgage would collapse. They needed cash to cycle their debt, to fill the gaping black hole created by gambling and greed. My mother picked up a piece of meat, casually placing it in her bowl, maintaining the naive facade of a rural woman newly in money. "Oh, I'm just a woman. What do I know about investments and leverage? I just like safety. My whole life, my biggest fear has been debt. Just thinking about paying bank interest every month gives me insomnia. My money, my house, why should I borrow? Buy a nice big place for $750K. Whatever's left, I put in a savings account for my retirement. That's the safest." Richard, who had remained silent drinking wine, suddenly slammed his glass down onto the table with a clack, startling everyone. He cleared his throat, his bloodshot eyes glaring at my mother. "Eleanor, you're being short-sighted. The kids want to strive and get rich. If you won't support them, don't hold them back. We're all one family. Your money is as good as theirs. You give the money here, I guarantee in a year it'll double or triple." Richard's words reeked of the forceful, desperate coercion of a man backed into a corner. He could no longer maintain his dignified facade. I looked at Tyler. He was looking down, his hands gripped so tightly under the table his knuckles were white. He knew better than anyone. If they didn't get this money, the loan sharks wouldn't let his family survive tomorrow. I gently placed my hand on my mother's, smiling as I said, "Mom, I think Tyler makes a good point. In this day and age, you have to know how to invest to get wealthy. Maybe you should listen to him. After all, he's the man of the house, his calculations are solid." Hearing my defense, Tyler snapped his head up, his eyes flashing with hope like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. But he had no idea that my agreement was merely a stepping stone to push him harder into the trap he had laid. My mother looked at me. We exchanged a knowing, silent glance, and she prepared to deliver the killing blow. My mother pretended to think deeply for a long time, making the tension in the room so thick you could hear the clock ticking. Martha sat on pins and needles, her eyes glued to my mother's face, as if trying to hypnotize her into nodding. Finally, my mother sighed, acting as if she had relented. She spoke slowly. "All right, since Natalie agrees, I won't be stubborn. You young people think differently than our generation. I'll consider letting you two manage the money. Borrowing or investing, it's up to you." Tyler cheered in joy. "Really, Mom, that's the smartest decision. I promise I won't let you down." Martha grinned ear to ear, quickly serving the largest piece of chicken into my mother's bowl. "See? I knew you loved your kids the most, Eleanor. Rest assured, my Tyler is so filial. He'll take care of you like his own mother." But before their smiles could fully form, My mother raised a hand to stop them. Her voice suddenly became unusually stern. Hold on, I'm not finished. I agree to hand over the money, but I have a principle in life: better safe than sorry. This $750,000 is a lifetime of blood and sweat. I can't just throw it to the wolves. Before I transfer any money, I want total transparency. Tyler swallowed hard, his voice shaking slightly. True transparency? What do you mean, Mom? My mother looked him dead in the eye, a gaze sharp enough to pierce his dark soul. I'm old. I believe in feng shui and astrology. The psychic told me this year, if I move money, I must be extremely careful. Above all, I must avoid anyone with bad debt. So, tomorrow morning, both of you take the morning off, go to the bank, and print out your last 6 months of bank statements and your full Equifax credit report for me to see. If it's clean, no messy debts, I'll transfer the money immediately. My mother's demand was a bomb detonating in the middle of the dinner table. Equifax credit report. Those 3 words, coming from the mouth of a retired rural teacher, left Tyler and his family dead in their tracks. A credit report holds every individual's borrowing history. If Tyler had taken out sketchy loans, had delinquent debt, or worse, if that $900,000 mortgage had already been disbursed, it would all be exposed starkly on that piece of paper. Tyler dropped his chopsticks onto the floor with a harsh clatter. All the blood drained from his face. Sweat poured off him, soaking the back of his dress shirt. My father-in-law choked on his wine, coughing violently, his face turning beet red. Martha stammered, trying to salvage the situation. Now, Eleanor, why are you making it so hard for the kids? We're family. You demanding credit checks makes it sound like a police interrogation. Tyler works in finance. His background has to be spotless, or they wouldn't employ him. My mother maintained her calm smile, but her eyes had turned icy. You're taking it too seriously, Martha. I just want peace of mind. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Printing a piece of paper takes 5 minutes. Why be afraid? Or is he hiding something from me? My mother's hanging question was a knife at Tyler's throat. He sat frozen, not daring to look up at anyone. Terror was written on every feature of his face. His usual confident, dignified aura was stripped away, leaving only the image of a trembling fraudster facing a phantom firing squad. Tyler sat there, his limbs awkward, his eyes darting wildly for a way out. Sweat beaded on his forehead, rolling down his temples. He knew the credit report was the death sentence for his family's grand scheme. He cleared his throat, trying to look victimized, but his trembling voice betrayed him. Mom. My stomach is suddenly killing me. Probably because I drank too much with clients lately, and my ulcer is acting up. Can we do this another day? Tomorrow morning, I have a critical meeting with the CEO. I can't miss it. Martha hurriedly stood up to run interference for her son. Oh, poor boy. Working himself to the bone. Eleanor, let's give it a few days. Health is the most important thing. My mother said nothing. She quietly opened her worn handbag, resting beside her chair. She slowly pulled out a blue plastic folder and dropped it with a thud into the middle of the table among the dishes. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, silencing everyone. All eyes locked onto the unfamiliar object. My mother spoke leisurely. A stomach ache can be cured with medicine, but the disease of deceit and greed has no cure, son. You don't need to go print it. I printed it for you. Along with the other interesting things you've been doing behind my daughter's back. I brought them all here for the whole family to admire. She opened the folder, pulling out the photos of Tyler and Martha, laughing in the luxury high-rise, pointing at the blueprints. Next was the copy of the $900,000 bank mortgage contract with my forged signature. She spread the papers across the table, her movements decisive, like a dealer showing her winning hand. My mother read aloud, her steely voice echoing through the room. Mortgage loan contract #208. Borrower, Tyler Davis. Guarantor, Natalie Harper. Loan amount, $900,000 exactly. Purpose of loan, purchase of penthouse in the Lakeshore East project. Tyler, care to explain to me when my daughter signed this document? And where did you get the $500,000 down payment when your salary is barely enough to get by? Seeing those papers, All the color drained from Tyler's face. He scrambled backward, knocking his chair over, shaking violently as if in shock. Richard and Martha stared blankly, their jaws dropped, unable to utter a single word. The earth-shattering secret they had meticulously covered up, thinking it was buried under a glamorous facade, was now exposed naked under the cold fluorescent lights. I stood up, looking straight into the face of the husband I once loved deeply. In my eyes there was no more pain, only absolute, bottomless contempt. I spoke with an eerie calmness. "What's wrong, Tyler? Cat got your tongue? Were you planning to trick me into carrying a $900,000 debt and then swallow my mother's $750,000 to pay off your dad's gambling debts to the mob? What do you think I am? A cash cow? Or an idiot you can lead around by the nose?" The room sank into a deathly silence. The delicious food on the table now looked grotesque. The curtain had fallen on the happy family act, revealing the hideous true faces of greedy parasites. My mother, a woman who spent her life working hard, now sat up perfectly straight, her gaze piercing the dark souls of the people across from her. She picked up the mortgage contract, her voice booming, articulating every number like a sledgehammer, smashing the ugly truth Tyler's family tried to hide. Every detail $900,000, adjustable interest rate, 3-0. Year term was read aloud, sounding unbearably bitter and cruel. With every word, Tyler slumped further, like a dying leaf in a storm. He didn't dare look me in the eye, nor his mother-in-law. He just stared at the floor, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. Richard and Martha were paralyzed, their mouths open but mute. Their eyes darted wildly, searching for a way to deny the charges, but it was hopeless against the ironclad evidence on the table. My mother set the paper down, her voice dropping with immense authority. "In-laws, how do you explain this? My daughter works tirelessly, saving every penny. Yet, behind her back, her husband forges her signature to take out a massive debt like this. $900,000 isn't $900. Dollars! You dared to be this reckless? Were you trying to murder her future?" Martha, after her initial panic, quickly regained her usual shrill, aggressive demeanor. She jumped up, pointing a finger at my mother, and wailed, "What are you talking about? My son is a big businessman. He borrows money to invest for profit, not to party. Husband and wife share the good and the bad. If the husband wants to get rich, the wife must support him. Signing a piece of paper never killed anyone. Why are you making such a scene?" I looked at her, realizing human shamelessness truly knows no bounds. I gave a cold laugh, my icy tone cutting through my mother-in-law's tantrum. "Invest for profit? Sounds great. Invest in what? In a $1.5 million penthouse for you two to enjoy? Or to pay off Richard's debts?" My words were a bucket of ice water to Richard's face. He jumped, stammering, What are you talking about? What debts?" I glared straight at him, showing zero respect. "Stop acting, Richard. The $500,000 down payment Tyler used for that house was hard money you borrowed from illegal bookies to pay your gambling debts, wasn't it? And another few $100,000 Tyler blew on crypto and stocks. You plan to use me as the fall guy, get a bank loan to pull cash out and pay off the mob, then swallow my mom's $750,000 to cycle your capital. A plan so perfect, it's purely evil." Hearing me expose everything, Tyler collapsed entirely. He fell to his knees on the floor, crawling over to hug my legs, tears and snot smearing his face. "Natalie, I'm wrong. I was backed into a corner. The loan sharks threatened to slice my dad's Achilles tendons. I had no other choice. I just wanted to use your profile temporarily to disperse the loan. I swear I would have paid it off gradually. I didn't mean to hurt you, babe." Looking at the man kneeling at my feet, I felt no pity, only disgust. A grown man in his 30s, strong and capable, but too cowardly to take responsibility for his actions, dragging his wife into the mud instead. My mother looked at the scene, shaking her head in disgust. She understood that her daughter's marriage had truly reached a dead end. Martha, seeing her son begging on his knees, felt a surge of maternal outrage. She lunged forward, shoved me away, hugged Tyler, and screamed at me. "What kind of wife are you? Your husband is in trouble, and you won't save him. You just stand there humiliating him. He borrowed money for this family, so his parents could have a respectable life. You've been my daughter-in-law for 3 years, and I haven't gotten a single thing out of you. Now that your husband stumbled, you're abandoning ship? You ungrateful bitch. Her insults felt like dull knives, sawing at my pride. I had once treated her like my own mother, enduring, sacrificing, pinching pennies to buy them gifts. And in her eyes, I was just a useless, ungrateful bitch. I took a deep breath, suppressing the rage surging in my chest, and slowly pulled my phone from my pocket. I spoke in a calm but steely voice. You call me ungrateful. You say Tyler borrowed money for me? Then listen carefully to what your precious son said about the wife who shared his bed. I hit play on the audio recording of Tyler from yesterday morning. In the suffocating silence of the living room, Tyler's booming voice rang out crystal clear, capturing every breath. Mom, Natalie is an idiot. A few sweet words and she'll cave. She trusts me blindly, signs whatever I tell her. Look, wait until the card arrives. I'll pull out cash advances and take you to buy furniture. The phrase Natalie is an idiot looped, serving as the death sentence for whatever affection remained in our marriage. The blood drained from Tyler's face. His arms went limp, his eyes glazing over in horror. Martha was struck dumb. Her jaw dropped as she stared at the phone in my hand like she was seeing a ghost, unable to utter a single word to justify that level of shamelessness. I turned off the recorder, looking straight into Tyler's eyes. My eyes were bone dry, void of a single tear. Did you hear that? In your eyes, I am just an idiot, a puppet for you to pull the strings, an ATM for you to drain. You never loved me. You only loved my stupidity and blind trust. For 3 years, I gave my all for you. And what did I get in return? Betrayal, lies, and a sky-high debt. I turned to my mother. She was wiping away a tear of sympathy for me. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength, and declared decisively, I don't want to hear any more explanations. From this moment on, you and I are completely done. I am filing for divorce immediately, and I am sending that stack of forged loan documents straight to the police. If you want to commit fraud, go repent in a jail cell. Hearing the words police and jail cell, Richard shook violently. He clutched his chest, coughing uncontrollably, his face turning pale. Martha slumped onto the floor, wailing theatrically. Oh Lord, the daughter-in-law is a murderer. She's trying to throw her husband's whole family in jail. Someone help us! But her cries had no effect now. The facade was stripped bare, and I, Natalie Harper, was no longer the submissive daughter-in-law of the past. I stood tall in the center of the living room, looking at the clowns performing before me with the cold eyes of someone fully awakened. Seeing that the victim act wasn't swaying me, Tyler tried to crawl back to his knees. He grabbed the hem of my pants, his voice cracking with fear. Natalie, I'm begging you. Hit me, curse at me, whatever you want, but please don't call the cops. If I go to prison, my life is over. How will my parents survive? For the sake of our marriage, give me a way out. I promise I'll work like a dog to pay you back. I'll never do it again. Looking down, the sheer cowardice was plastered across the face of the man I used to call my husband. He wasn't afraid of hurting me. He was only afraid of taking responsibility. I coldly yanked my pant leg from his grip, stepping back to keep a safe distance from that virus of greed. Martha, seeing that her son's begging was useless, wiped her tears and stood up. Her facial expression changed at lightning speed. From a pathetic beggar, she morphed into a sharp, calculating merchant. She jutted her chin out, her voice hardening with calculation. Fine. Since it's come to this, I don't need to be polite either. You want a divorce? Fine. I'll agree to let Tyler sign the papers, but debts must be settled fairly. I raised an eyebrow, unsure what trick she was trying to pull next. Fairly? What do you mean? Martha pointed to the 4 walls of the apartment. This house is a marital asset, in both your names. If you divorce, it gets split in half. You want to keep the house, hand over half its value to Tyler, about $250,000 cash. He'll use it to pay off some debt, and then I'll tell him to sign the papers. Otherwise, we sell the house and split the money, go our separate ways. Don't dream of swallowing this whole house and kicking my son to the curb. I couldn't believe my ears. Even at this stage, she still had the audacity to demand a division of assets. When we bought this condo, my parents gave us $200,000. I saved up $100,000. Tyler contributed a measly $20,000 for furniture and co-signed a small bank loan just for show. I was the one paying that mortgage out of my salary every month. Yet now, she dared to demand half. I burst out laughing, a bitter laugh that echoed in the suffocating room. You truly have no shame. This house was paid for 90% by me and my parents. What did your son contribute besides some cheap furniture? Now he racks up debt, and you want to sell my house to pay his debts? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child you can bully? Martha glared, straining her neck to argue. I don't care who paid more. His name is on the deed. He gets half. That's the law. Sue us if you think you can. I'm telling you, if you don't cough up the cash, Tyler won't sign. We'll drag this out forever. Let's see if you can ever marry another man, or if you just die a lonely old spinster. Martha's ultimate shamelessness made me shudder. It turns out when people are backed into a corner by greed, they can discard all dignity and morality to bite others. I looked at my mother. She was pressing her lips tightly together, her eyes burning with fury, but maintaining astonishing composure. She stood up, walked to my side, and placed a hand on my shoulder, transferring her strength. My mother spoke in a deep, ironclad voice. Fine. You want to talk law? We'll talk in court. Do you think my daughter is a pushover? We've prepared everything. Let's see who ends up on the street with absolutely nothing. That very night, my mother and I kicked Tyler's entire family out of the apartment, ignoring their screaming and cursing in the hallway. I coldly locked the deadbolt, calling the building security to handle them if they kept causing a disturbance. When their curses faded behind the thick wooden door, I finally allowed myself to collapse onto the sofa, my body shaking violently from exhaustion. The next morning, I took a day off work and went with my mother to a law firm. The lawyer was an old college friend of my mother's, Uncle Henry, a prominent attorney specializing in complex divorce and asset dispute cases. After hearing my story and reviewing the evidence, the audio files, photos of the forged mortgage, and bank statements, Henry nodded, his eyes thoughtful but determined. You have a sure win regarding the divorce and nullifying that guarantor contract, Henry said. Tyler's forgery is a criminal offense, forgery of documents and identity theft. If you press charges, he could face serious prison time. That is your trump card to force him to settle. I asked, my voice laced with worry. What about the house? His mother is demanding half. I'm scared. Henry smiled reassuringly. Don't worry. The law is fair. A 50-over-50 split of marital assets is the baseline, but the court heavily weighs the financial contributions of each party. You have all the wire transfer receipts from your parents gifting the money specifically to you. You have the payroll statements showing you paid the mortgage. If Tyler can't prove his contributions, combined with his dissipation of assets and taking on illegal debt, the judge will award you the vast majority, possibly the entire house, if we prove he is entirely at fault. Hearing his analysis, the boulder in my heart was lifted. I knew the road ahead would be tough. Court hearings, tense mediations, and dirty tricks his family might deploy. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I looked at my mother and saw her eyes filled with trust and encouragement. I signed the lawsuit and the unilateral divorce petition. My handwriting was decisive and strong, vastly different from the weak, trembling signatures on those old insurance papers. This wasn't just a signature ending a mistaken marriage. It was a signature opening a new chapter of my life. A life where I lived for myself, for my mother, and never let anyone trample my trust again. Stepping out of the law office, the rain had stopped. The weak winter sun filtered through the gray clouds, shining down on the busy Chicago streets. I took a deep breath. The air was freezing but crisp. My chest felt unusually light. In the days after filing for divorce, I thought I would get a moment of peace to collect myself, but I was wrong. The spite and hatred of people backed into a corner were more terrifying than I imagined. On a Monday morning, while I was leading a meeting with the department heads, loud, chaotic noises from the lobby reached our floor, halting the meeting. The receptionist called up, her voice panicked, saying a family member was looking for me, causing a scene downstairs and refusing to listen to reason. I went down to the lobby, my heart racing, but I tried to keep my face as calm as possible. Stepping out of the elevator, I saw Martha sitting flat on the polished granite floor. Her hair was a mess, her clothes disheveled. She was pounding her fists on the floor, wailing tragically, as if suffering a great injustice. Around her, my coworkers and clients formed a circle, pointing and whispering. Curious and sympathetic eyes darted toward me like needles. Seeing me, Martha pounced like a starving tiger. She rushed over, grabbed my blazer, and screamed in a shrill voice that tore through the quiet office. "Oh Lord, everyone look at my daughter-in-law. She's a shameless tramp." The moment her husband hit a rough patch, she started sleeping around. She abandoned her husband, abandoned his elderly parents to run off with another man. She scammed our family out of all our money, and now she's throwing us out on the street. If heaven has eyes, please judge this poor old woman's case. Blood rushed to my face. My ears rang from her blatant, vile slander. She knew my reputation was the most important thing to a financial executive like me. She wanted to attack that weakness to force me to drop the lawsuit. Suspicious glances from my coworkers began to shift toward me. The murmuring grew like a kicked hornet's nest. I knew if I showed weakness now, or got into a screaming match with her, I would lose. I would lose in the trap of public humiliation she had set. I took a deep breath and violently swatted away the bony hands clutching my blazer. I didn't cry. I didn't try to explain myself. I simply pulled out my phone, opening the security camera footage from the condo the day I kicked them out, and the audio recordings of their fraudulent plotting. I connected my phone via Bluetooth to the massive smart TV in the lobby, which was usually used for corporate presentations. I spoke, my voice cold and steely, cutting through Martha's fake wailing. "Martha, are you done performing? If you like public spectacles, I will show the whole world your family's true face. Here is the evidence of your son, forging my signature, to take out a $900,000 loan. And here is the audio of you plotting to scam my mother out of $750,000. Would you like me to send this to the Homeowners Association where you're currently renting?" On the massive screen, the image of Tyler begging on his knees appeared. The image of Martha greedily demanding half my assets was clear as day. The audio of Tyler saying, "Natalie is an idiot," blasted over the speakers, drowning out her fake cries. The crowd gasped in shock. The suspicious glares from a moment ago turned into absolute disgust and contempt directed at the woman sitting on the floor. Martha was speechless, the color draining from her face. She scrambled up, hastily covering her face with her hands. She backed away, then bolted for the revolving doors like a rat caught in a spotlight. She had been ready to trample on everyone's dignity, only to receive the ultimate humiliation in return. After her failed terror campaign at my office, Martha didn't dare show her face again, but the storm for their family was only just beginning. I moved back in permanently with my mother in the suburbs, an older house, but warm with familial love. It was there I found peaceful, dreamless sleep again. But news about Tyler's family still reached me through old neighbors and banking colleagues. The news wasn't good, but it was the inevitable price they had to pay. I heard that after I came out, Tyler's family had to rent a dilapidated, run-down house in a deep alley on the south side to hide from their debts. But loan sharks don't let their prey go that easily. They have eyes everywhere, and they track the scent of money and desperation faster than bloodhounds. One morning, as Tyler was getting into his car to go to work, the debt collectors ambushed him. Neighbors recounted the scene as horrifying, like something out of a mafia movie. The thugs aggressively threw red paint all over their front door. The pungent smell of vandalizing chemicals forced the whole block to cover their noses. They didn't beat him, but the chilling threats about taking a little blood or slicing his dad's Achilles tendons terrified Richard so much he suffered a hypertensive crisis and was rushed to the ER. The rental house, already cramped and damp, became even more gloomy, saturated with the smell of vandalism and overarching fear. But it didn't stop there. Disasters continued to rain down on Tyler's head like falling dominoes. The story of him defrauding his wife, forging loan documents, And getting involved with the mob spread throughout the finance and banking sector, a world that is surprisingly small and highly values integrity. One afternoon, I received a text from an old friend who worked in HR at Tyler's firm. "Your ex got fired, Nat." The CEO found out about his bad debt and fraud. They were terrified of the liability, so they terminated him immediately. He's been blacklisted in the industry. He'll have a hard time finding a job anywhere else. Reading the message, I felt no sympathy. Tyler used to pride himself on his manager title, his sleek suits, and his glamorous connections, but he forgot that all of that was built on a foundation of honesty. When that foundation collapsed, his castle of prestige vanished into thin air. Now, he was no longer Martha's pride, no longer a gold mine for his family to exploit. He was just an unemployed man drowning in debt, despised by society. I sat by the window, watching the autumn rain patter against the awning. I remembered the image of Tyler from the past, an enthusiastic young man with a bright smile who once made my heart flutter. That man was dead, killed by greed and cowardice. The man currently hiding like a rat in that vandalized rental house was just a soulless shell, a defective product of his family's twisted upbringing. Karma misses no one. Whether it comes late or early, heavy or light, depends entirely on what we have sown in the past. On the day of the trial, the sky was gray, threatening rain. The biting winter chill seeped through the layers of my coat. My mother, Henry, and I walked into the courtroom. The solemn, cold atmosphere sent a slight chill down my spine. On the other side, Tyler sat huddled in the defendant's chair. He looked noticeably emaciated, his eye sockets sunken and dark. The old suit he wore hung off him baggily, an ironic mockery of his former polished self. Martha and Richard sat in the gallery, shrinking and haggard, completely devoid of the aggressive energy they had when they crashed my office. The trial was tense, but everything went according to Henry's plan. My lawyer clearly presented every piece of evidence. The handwriting analysis confirmed the signature on the $900,000 mortgage was a forgery. Bank statements proved that 90% of the funds used to purchase our current home came from my separate assets and my parents. Tyler could only keep his head down in silence. Occasionally, he mumbled weak defenses, claiming he did it for his family. But against the sharp logic of the law, those excuses became laughable. The moment the judge banged the gavel to deliver the verdict, I felt a 1,000-pound boulder lift off my shoulders. The judge declared, the $900,000 guarantor contract was null and void due to fraud. I had absolutely zero obligation to repay that loan. Regarding the marital property, since I proved my overwhelming financial contribution, the court ruled I retained 80% of the home's value. Tyler received 20%, commensurate with his minor renovations and minimal contributions over our 3-year marriage. I agreed to buy out his 20% equity to keep the house the home built on my parents' blood, sweat, and tears. The buyout amount was roughly $100,000. Seeing that number, a glimmer of hope sparked in Martha's eyes. Perhaps she thought this money would help her family survive this crisis. But justice isn't that simple. The moment the judge finished speaking, a representative from the bank where Tyler had amassed massive unsecured loans and credit card debt stood up. They requested an immediate freeze and garnishment of the $100,000 Tyler was to receive to satisfy those judgments. Tyler froze, watching the money flash before his eyes and vanish in an instant. He didn't get to touch a single cent. He left with nothing, and even gained court fees and the looming threat of criminal prosecution if the other bank decided to press hard on the mortgage forgery. Stepping out of the courthouse, Tyler looked at me with eyes full of absolute despair and belated regret. His lips moved, about to say something, perhaps an apology or a plea, but I turned my face away. I didn't hate him anymore. The contempt had faded. All that remained was pity for a misguided life. I held my mother's hand, and we walked across the windy courthouse plaza. The rain began to fall. The freezing drops washed away the grime of the past, returning to me a wide-open sky of freedom ahead. The legal storm passed, leaving behind a pile of ruins for my ex-in-laws. Without my guarantee, and without the ability to pay the adjustable interest rate, the bank financing the Lakeshore East project swiftly foreclosed on the $1.5 million condo Tyler had secretly contracted. The $500,000 down payment, the hard money Tyler borrowed from the mob, was completely lost. According to the contract clauses, defaulting on payments led to massive penalties and forfeiture of the deposit. The dream of a penthouse with a lake view, a display room for designer bags and imported liquor for Martha, burst like a soap bubble. But the real nightmare was the debt numbers, multiplying every day. Loan sharks don't care if you got scammed or lost your house. They only care about the principal and the compounding interest that grew by the hour. I heard that to save her husband's and son's lives, Martha had to swallow her pride and fire-sell their ancestral home in Indiana, the place where their family roots lay. But the money from selling a rural home in a frozen real estate market was a drop in the bucket compared to the black hole of Richard's $500,000 debt and Tyler's new liabilities. After selling all their assets, they still owed a massive sum. They became literally homeless, hunted by creditors everywhere. An acquaintance told me they saw Tyler's family huddled in a slummy rental near a city landfill on the south side, an area meant for the poorest laborers. Martha, the woman who used to flaunt her dresses and look down on her daughter-in-law, now had to collect scrap metal and wash dishes at a cheap diner to scrape together pennies to feed her husband and son. Richard, after a severe stroke, was left half paralyzed, bedridden. He lay there, bitter, cursing at his wife and son all day. And Tyler, from a dapper banking manager, was now sun-baked and emaciated, taking whatever odd jobs he could find, from manual labor to driving for Uber. His eyes were always darting, terrified, like a wounded animal. I sat in my home, the home I fought to keep looking out at the city, lighting up. The collapse of their family was as swift and brutal as a sandcastle meeting the rising tide. I didn't feel triumphant. Gloating is the emotion of a winner in a game. This was the tragedy of human lives. I only felt the profound weight of the cost of greed and deceit. They had wanted to greedily swallow someone else's blood and sweat, to build a castle on the pain of their daughter-in-law. Ultimately, they were buried under the rubble of that very greed. They were paying the price not with money, but with their dignity, health, and the future of their entire family. That price was higher than any debt, and tragically, they would have to pay it for the rest of their lives. On a beautiful late autumn weekend afternoon, I took my mother to the supermarket to buy supplies for our upcoming vacation. The bustling mall, with its bright lights and luxury boutiques, made my mother, a woman used to small rural farmers' markets, gasp in constant awe. Watching her happily pick out scarves and try on coats filled my heart with joy. After shopping, we went to the grocery section in the basement to buy some fruit. I was busy picking out imported red apples when my mother gently tugged my sleeve. Her eyes were fixed on the clearance produce section, hidden in the far back corner. She whispered, "Natalie, look at that person. She looks so familiar." I squinted in the direction she was pointing. In the section designated for wilted, bruised vegetables being cleared out at the end of the day, a woman in her 60s was bent over, digging through the bins. She wore worn-out, faded home clothes, frayed at the elbows. Her graying hair was hastily tied up with a plastic claw clip, missing half its teeth. She picked up a yellowing head of cabbage, weighed it in her hands, put it back, and then picked up a bag of sprouting potatoes, her face calculating every penny. Even though that face had aged 10 years, looking so weathered and haggard it was hard to recognize, I knew exactly who it was. It was Martha, my former mother-in-law. The woman who used to loudly criticize the rural gifts my mother sent as country trash, who used to throw away leftovers into the garbage without a second thought, was now scavenging for wilted vegetables to cook for dinner. Perhaps sensing someone staring at her, Martha looked up. Our eyes met. In that moment, I saw her eyes widen in shock, rapidly shifting to absolute panic and ultimate shame. She hastily looked down, using her hand to cover half her face, and turned her back to me, looking as if she wanted to find a crack in the floor to crawl into. She was terrified I would recognize her, terrified of facing the naked truth of her pathetic situation in front of the daughter-in-law she used to despise. My mother was about to step forward to say hello, but I grabbed her hand to stop her. I shook my head slightly, pulling my mother toward the checkout lanes. I didn't want to humiliate her further, nor did I want to dig up the past. Silence, at this moment, was the greatest mercy I could offer her. Out in the parking garage, my mother sighed thoughtfully. It's true what they say, life has its ups and downs. She was so arrogant back then, and looks so tragic now. It's the karma we create for ourselves, honey. I nodded, opening the car door for her. Yes, Mom. Looking at her, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel pity. But that pity stops there. Everyone has their own life. The path she walks is the one she chose. She has to bear the consequences. The car rolled out of the parking garage, leaving behind the woman shivering with her bag of wilted vegetables. I realized the sweetest revenge isn't tossing sarcastic insults or gloating over an enemy's pain. It's living a good, brilliant life. My calmness today was the clearest proof that I had entirely moved past my history, no longer letting the ghost of their family haunt my life for another second. My life continued to flow peacefully, busy with new projects and experiential trips with my mother. The name Tyler or the Davis family seemed to have faded into oblivion. Until one winter morning, while I was drinking coffee and scrolling through the news on my tablet, a massive headline on the front page of the legal news section caught my eye, making my hand holding the coffee cup freeze in midair. Massive illegal loan shark ring busted. Dozens arrested for extortionate interest rates. Hundreds of victims face bankruptcy. Curious, I clicked on the article. It described a sophisticated criminal syndicate operating under the guise of a finance company, specializing in app-based loans and hard money lending with interest rates up to 300% a year. They used brutal methods to collect debts, from psychological terror to physical assault. At the end of the article, the reporter listed a few typical victims owing massive sums as a warning to the public. And I saw the familiar name. Richard Davis, principal debt, $500,000. Compounding interest has pushed the current total to over $1,500,000. The family sold all assets but failed to cover the interest, currently facing destitution and severe illness. $1.5 million. That number glared on the screen, a final confirmation of the irreversible collapse of my ex-husband's family. It turned out, even when they sold their home in Indiana, even with Tyler working himself to the bone, it was just a drop in the ocean against the gaping maw of the loan shark monster. My mother returned from the market, saw me staring blankly, and asked anxiously. I handed her the tablet to read. After reading it, she stood in stunned silence for a moment, then took off her glasses, shaking her head. Terrifying, isn't it, honey? Gambling is the uncle of poverty. Getting involved with it is a death sentence. Richard cared so much about his pride his whole life, and in the end, he drowned in a mountain of debt he created himself. Thank God you got out early. If you had stayed tied to that family, you and I would be living on the streets right now. I looked out the window. The freezing drizzle blurred the landscape. I shuddered thinking about the scenario where I had been weak. If I had signed that $900,000 guarantee, or if I let them trick my mother out of $750,000, my name would likely be on that list of victims. My life would be as dark as Tyler's future is now. This truth acted as a final period to any lingering question marks in my heart. There was no injustice here. It was all the inevitable consequence of greed and stupidity. They chose a shortcut to wealth, chose gambling to change their lives, and now they had to pay with the rest of their lives in fear and poverty. I turned off the tablet screen and finished my cold coffee. The bitter taste faded, leaving a sweet aftertaste in my throat. I turned to my mother and smiled. Well, Mom, let the world deal with its own problems. I have the day off today. Let's go to the salon. Do you want a perm or maybe dye it chestnut brown to look younger? My mother laughed, a radiant smile that dispelled the winter chill. Oh, you and your ideas. I'm too old to be playing dress-up. But, sure, let's go do something fresh. We held hands walking out of the house, leaving behind the gloomy news. Outside, it was still cold, but inside my heart, spring had truly returned. On an autumn night, the sky was high and clear, sparkling with tens of thousands of stars like diamonds scattered across a mysterious black velvet carpet. My mother and I sat on the spacious balcony of the new condo. On the small table sat a pot of chamomile tea, releasing a gentle aroma, and a plate of cookies my mother baked. The night breeze blew softly, carrying a slight, crisp, chill, but the space around us felt incredibly warm. My mother was tinkering with a telescope, an old antique left by my father that she had cherished all these years. When my father was alive, he loved astronomy. He used to say that whenever humans look up at the sky, they realize how small they are, and their earthly sorrows vanish into the vast universe. My mother cheered softly like a child. "Natalie, come look at this. The sky is so clear today, you can see Jupiter perfectly. Your dad used to love watching Jupiter the most." I put my eye to the lens. A perfectly round, glowing dot appeared. Surrounding it were tiny moons orbiting it. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I felt like I was touching another world, quiet and eternal, where there was no deceit, no mundane calculations. I pulled away from the telescope, turned to hug my mother's shoulders, rested my head on her shoulder, and whispered, "It's so beautiful, Mom. Dad is up there. He's probably watching us, right now." My mother stroked my hair, her voice reflective. "Yes, your dad is watching over us. He probably blessed his daughter, helping you survive that disaster and find this peace. You see, Natalie, after the rain, the sun shines again. After the storm, the sky is always the most beautiful. Human life is the same. You have to go through stormy days to know how to appreciate the warm, sunny ones." I closed my eyes, filling my lungs with the air of freedom. 3 years ago, I was a submissive woman, relying on my husband's love, terrified of every glance from my in-laws. I used to think that if I lost that marriage, my sky would collapse. But now, having walked through it all, I realized my sky had never been wider or more brilliant. I lost a terrible husband, but I found myself. I lost my blind faith in romantic love, but I built a solid faith in my own abilities and the sacred bond of a mother's love. I had a stable career, a home filled with laughter, and most importantly, I had the freedom to decide my own life. My mother turned to look at me, her eyes overflowing with love and trust. "So, what are your plans now? Are you planning to open your heart to anyone else? Or are you just going to live with this old lady for the rest of your life?" I laughed, taking her hand. "If fate hasn't arrived, I'll just stay with you. I have so many things I want to do, Mom. I want to take a painting class. I want to take you to Europe next summer. I want to learn how to love myself even more. If a man comes along, that's fun. If not, I will still live as brilliantly as a sunflower." My mother smiled. The satisfied smile of a mother, seeing her child truly grown and at peace. The two of us sat there under the starry sky, sipping hot tea and talking about our future plans. No more shadows of a sad past, no more petty worries, only peace present in every breath. I looked up at the night sky, silently thanking the storms that had passed. Ladies and gentlemen, true happiness does not lie in materialistic calculations, but in letting go of hatred and having a deep faith in karma. Only when a woman is independent, financially autonomous, and maintains a kind heart can she truly hold her destiny in her own hands. We hope that through this story, each of us will find the motivation to live stronger and more forgivingly. Continue to live brilliantly and peacefully, because after the storm, the sky will always be blue again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel, turn on notifications, like, and share to spread these meaningful messages to everyone. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts below. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.